Welcome, fellow constitutionalists, to the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior fighting for your right just to be an American. It is October 31st, Halloween, in the year of our Lord 2020. Remember, we are hyphen-free, PC-free, mask-free zone. God is still in control, and he does love you. And remember, 2 Corinthians 5:11a, therefore, knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade folks of the truth. I am broadcasting from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. And today, we are going to be talking about an op-ed by Senator Elizabeth Warren. It was published on the 29th, and it's a doozy. It's in a news service called NowThis. Now This is a very progressive leftist news organization, and they... Let's put it this way, they don't always tell the truth, if you know what I mean. The title of this news story, or this op-ed, is called "The GOP Followed Mitch McConnell Straight into the Dumpster. Elizabeth Warren Responds to the Supreme Court Confirmation." Now, if you've been living underneath a rock and you don't know what's happened this past week, that Coney, Barrett has been not only went through her hearings, sent to the floor. She was confirmed by the Senate. She was sworn in by Clarence Thomas at a ceremony at the White House, and then later on by the official swearing in by Chief Justice John Roberts into the Supreme Court. She's able to sit on the court now. She's able to hear cases. And the left is just going berserk. I mean, they are just beside themselves with this. And we're going to go through these. She makes 5 points in this op-ed. Basically what she's doing here in the op-ed, she's addressing Americans who may feel discouraged this week after rush confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Coney Barrett. There has never been a more righteous time to get into this fight, she says. And she goes on to say here about Mitch McConnell's to-do list has one thing on it in large, thick font: hold on to power at any cost. COVID-19 cases are rising and our economy is on the brink of collapse, but he refuses to pass a stimulus package because relief for American families isn't on his list. Instead, he rammed through a Supreme Court confirmation in the middle of election. Now, let me just hold the phone here. I know this was written on the 29th, but since then, and I doubt they're going to put a retraction on this, the GDP growth hit an all-time record of 31.1% growth in the third quarter of this year. That means the economy's on the actual V-shape trajectory. And that's very, very good news for President Trump. It's very, very good news for Republicans. I should say conservative Republicans, because there's a lot of Republicans that are against President Trump. But it's very good news for the country. Very good news for Americans that the economy has come up. It's very good news for the Republic. News like this can bring the Republic together. And help us focus on things of more importance. So the economy is getting back on foot. The main problem with the economy has been the political response to the CCP virus. It's Chinese Communist Party virus. We call it COVID-19 over here in the States. It's been the political response to that. And this is just another non-ending parade of attempts by the Democrat Party to smear Donald Trump and get him out of office. That's all it is. And I'm not going to get any further into that. I might do a video a little bit later on how Joe Biden's actually plagiarizing Donald Trump's response to the COVID. As he plagiarizes a lot of things. But anyway, let's go through. Like I said, there's 5 things that she thinks Americans ought to know about this whole confirmation process. 1, why this confirmation is good timing for Republicans who want to tear down the Affordable Care Act. Now, before I read into this real quick, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, has things have been done to it by the Republicans, and like the mandate, the individual mandate's been taken out, that fine's been taken out. Which that was the whole thing to sort of propel Obamacare into single-payer care by the government, socialized medicine, in other words. And so she thinks this is good timing for that. notwithstanding what Amy Coney Barrett said about her judicial philosophy, where she's going to judge the cases on the merit and the law and not on politics. But, Democrats, they don't understand that. They don't understand how you can do that, how you can keep politics out of this. But she goes on to say on November 10th, the Supreme Court will hear arguments on whether the Affordable Care Act should be overturned. Republicans already tried to repeal and replace Obamacare in Congress, but they failed. So now they're trying to get it done in the Supreme Court. Now, let me stop the presses there. If you don't know, there was those maverick senators like John McCain that voted against repealing the Affordable Care Act. And if he would have voted to repeal it, it would have been repealed. And that's a shame. That's a real shame, because he was never really a Republican. He was more of a Democrat, more of a progressive, more of a liberal than he ever was a conservative or a Republican. But anyway, that there was attempts under Paul Ryan as the speakership, which he was a lousy Speaker of the House. But anyway, so it's up. There's more lawsuits against this. Okay. And I am going to have a short video about severability clause and some other things, issues around this that people don't understand. So anyway, as she goes on, nominating a Supreme Court justice who will likely side against the ACA is the last gasp of the right-wing billionaire-fueled party that can't enact their extremist agenda the Democratic way. So they're stacking the court instead. Oh, they're packing the court. They're just stacking and packing the court, which the Democrats have turned that definition of court packing on its head. And she goes on, and now it's just health care that's on the line. And it's not just health care, it's online. It's also Roe v. Wade, the right to join a union, protection for our dreamers, and the fight to be an American where no one is discriminated against because of the color of their skin, because of how they worship, and because of who they love. Now, this op-ed is going to be full of, if you followed Democrats and if you know what projecting your feelings or projecting your behaviors and attitudes on other people, this whole tirade by Senator Elizabeth Warren is nothing but projection. They're projecting exactly what the Democrats are doing and accusing the Republicans of doing the same thing. When she goes on to talk about Roe v. Wade, the right to join a union, she's turning that around. The Republicans don't care if you join a union or not. They want people to have the right to choose whether they want to join a union or not be forced to join a union. So she's turned that around. Protection for dreamers. That's a whole nother video we could get into on there, but I feel for these dreamers that these kids were brought over illegally by their parents. They're here now. A lot of them have graduated college now and are in the workforce. Does there need to be something to do with those? Absolutely. What that answer is, that's another show entirely, and we should get some experts in on talking about that, but that's a separate issue. The fight to be an American who no one is discriminated against because of the color of their skin. I'm loath to say this title because of my Christian background, but Joe Biden was on a show called Charlemagne the God, little g, God. And he told him in that show that if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. The Democrat Party since the Civil War has been nothing but against black folks, against people of color. Their inner city policies, Planned Parenthood was founded by Margaret Sanger, and she was a racist of the racist. And if you notice the Planned Parenthoods, most of them are in black communities or communities of people of color, because she looked upon black people as weeds and they need to be exterminated. And Democrats and their policies have done great damage to the black family. If you've ever listened to Thomas Sowell or Walter E. Williams or Larry Elder, they'll tell you. I mean, I'm echoing what they're saying. They'll tell you that they've done, their policies of destroying the black family has done great harm to the black community. So you have that. The second point she gets on is how the Senate Republicans cheated. Oh, they cheated. How dare you folks? Bunch of cheaters. It's almost childish, this op-ed. In 2016, Senate Republicans blocked President Obama's Supreme Court nominee, claiming it was too close to an election. President Obama had a year left in his term. Meanwhile, Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed just 8 days before the end of the election after millions of people have already voted. In 2016, Mitch McConnell made up a rule to benefit his party, and then he shamelessly discarded that rule in 2020. Time and again, he takes the rule of law and throws it in the garbage, and his Republican colleagues follow him into the dumpster. When those in power change the rules to benefit themselves, they're playing the game of tyrants. Really. I am just so shocked about this one. This, like I said, she is so childish in her understanding. Did Mitch McConnell and them stymie and stifle the Garland? The Garland nomination. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember his name. I should have wrote it down. Merrick Garland, I believe it was. Yes. Was it their right to do so? Yes. Did Mitch McConnell say why he was doing it? Yes, he did. But for some reason, when you go to the second paragraph I read, that, he shamelessly discarded the rule in 2020, and then she goes on talking about how he disregards the rule of law and throws it in the garbage. Folks, the Constitution, read my nose. The Constitution says that the president has the authority, the enumerated power given to him by the states to nominate people to folks to the men or women to the federal bench and also to the Supreme Court. The Senate has a role in this. It's called oh man, my brain ain't working today, folks. They advise and consent is what it is. They have this role of advise and consent. Now they have that role, but there's nothing in the Constitution that says that they have to. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they have to have hearings, that they have to even acknowledge that the president had put forth a candidate. Matter of fact, 29 times in the history of this country, the president of the United States, no matter what party, has nominated a replacement to the bench 29 times, Supreme Court, 29 times in our history. 19 times they were confirmed. And you know the reason why? And the lamestream media ain't going to tell you this, and Elizabeth Warren isn't going to tell you this either, because the 19 times they were confirmed, and it didn't matter if and both sides did it, it was because both parties the same party held the Senate and the White House. The other 10 times, one party held the White House and the opposite party held the Senate. And those 10 were never confirmed, or they didn't even get a hearing. But even though Mitch McConnell made this promise in 2016, which, I believe he had every intent in following, lest we forget the Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and his hearings. I'm sorry. Once that happened, all bets are off the table. All promises are out the window. You cannot deal. I want to keep a promise to somebody, but if they sucker punch you, how can you keep that promise with that person if they just come out and sucker punch you? And that's exactly what they did with Kavanaugh, but they acted like, nothing happened. Nothing happened in the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. What are you talking about? And they're still talking about this today, that Brett Kavanaugh is illegitimate because of the seriousness of the charges, which were never proven. Were never proven. So the President Donald Trump and the Senate had every right to do exactly what they did. They had every constitutional authority to do what they did in pushing Amy Coney Barrett through. And I say, and look, folks, this is politics. And I say good for them. Good for them. Let the Democrats whine and complain all they want. They did this to themselves. They did this to themselves. Point 3 that she brings up. how the confirmation hearings were a sham. The nominee spent days ducking and weaving around questions that should be uncontroversial. She refused to say whether it's wrong to separate children from their parents to deter immigration. She refused to say whether climate change is happening. She even refused to say that a president should commit a peaceful transfer of power. This was no democratic hearing. This was a puppet show where the Federalist Society was pulling the strings. What is the Federalist Society, you may ask? And she's going to talk about that in the next point here. But I want to get back to this other point about the hearings being a sham. They were not a sham. The Democrats were asking her questions on cases that could be coming up before her in the future. And she was following the same, and this is funny, the same principles that Ruth Bader Ginsburg laid down at her confirmation hearing. But they weren't having none of it. Oh, you can't do that. You cannot invoke Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG. Nope, you don't have that right to do that. So this has been a constant thing with Democrats. When situations seem to suit them, it's okay. But you turn it around and use the same situation against them, they're all beside themselves, folks. And it's ridiculous. And to have her talk about the questions about climate change. Look, folks, I don't care who you are. Climate change, the idea of climate change is a socialist power grab of economies throughout the world. That's all it is. You are exhibiting the hubris of hubrises when you say man is causing climate change and mankind can fix it. You just are. You don't, honestly, you don't understand the world. You don't understand the climate. You don't understand who created it. You don't understand who's in control of it. And I'm telling you right now, it's not mankind. It's God above that's actually controlling this, folks. And it's just sheer hubris that mankind thinks, or a portion of mankind thinks that we can fix the climate. And that's has nothing to do with it. It's another way for socialists to perform a power grab of nations. That's all it is. So why should she even answer any questions like that? It's again, this op-ed is one of the most childish op-eds I've ever read. Now, she was talking about the Federalist Society here in point 3, which brings me to point 4. Why the nominations is a win for dark money. Now, you can imagine where she's going with this, folks. Imagine a spider web of dark money. The Federalist Society is basically at the center of it, with other groups like Judicial Crisis Network. It's just a few decades, they've gotten very powerful, raising millions of dollars to fund the law schools to train conservative lawyers, think tanks to promote their big business agenda, and lobbyists to influence public opinion. Who funds these groups? Billionaires who stand to benefit from conservative judges, people like, and folks, I almost hate to say these names because these are the only names they seem to know that they're actually bringing up, folks. Joseph Coors, the Koch brothers, or the Koch brothers, however you want to pronounce that. Robert Mercer. People want to be accountable to no one. Now remember that line there. The rich and powerful pour money into winning the presidency in Congress, but a lesser known fact is they pour money into our courts as well. The Federalist Society supported the nominations of Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. Clearly, their decades-long investment paid off. They now have a judiciary title or tilted towards corporate power, and it's not just the Supreme Court. Trump and Mitch McConnell have rammed through a record number of judges to serve lifetime appointments in circuit courts as well. Now, 1, elections mean things. Elections have consequences. I shouldn't have to say any more about that. Dark money. Okay. It's the Federalist Society and what was the other one? Judicial Crisis Network. They have every right to support, as well as Joseph Coors and the Koch brothers and Robert Mercer. They have every right to support groups that they agree with, conservative groups, whatever. They have that right in America. Last time I checked, we're still in America. So they have that right to do so. Okay? But again, this is another one of those projections. Oh, The bad Republicans, the bad orange man. Oh, they're behind all this dark money coming in. Who else is actually putting dark money into elections? Local elections of DAs. Who might that be? Attorney generals of states. Who might that be? Who's putting a lot of dark money that can't be traced behind the Democrat Party in elections? George Soros. I just said a bad word there. Oh, I'm a conspiracy theorist. Folks, if you track the money back, and I encourage you to go over and watch the Glenn Beck show and look up some of his old specials that he has on there. He's traced this money back. He's done a very good job of this through George Soros' Open Society and a lot of other groups he has. He funnels millions and billions of dollars to these groups to get people like Keith Ellis elected to the Wisconsin. Was it Wisconsin or Minnesota? One's Keith Ellison to the state attorney general's office. He's behind getting a lot of these liberal DAs appointed, like down in Baltimore, all over the country. So they're talking about that's dark money. When the Biden campaign was asked where all these donations came from, and they're all small donations. Well, where are they coming from? They're all small donations. You don't have to worry about it. Federal election law, we have to know where that money's coming from. It can't just be coming out of thin air. We have to know that. So again, she's projecting when she's talking about dark money, because if you want to know about dark money, just go to the Democrats. I mean, Hillary Clinton was a perfect example of how to do this. The paper for play for the Clinton Foundation. She was Secretary of State. Her husband went out and begging money from all these oligarchs and all these other countries and stuff. She's the queen of dark money. The Democrats they've made this dark money an art form, folks. And so it's laughable that she put this back on the Republicans. Now her fifth and final point. Why this nomination doesn't reflect the views of the majority of our people. And this one's laughing. When I first read this, I was laughing, folks, and I'm still trying to keep from, I'm smiling now and I'm laughing a little bit because I got it all out before. I couldn't have done this video when it was posted on the 29th. I was laughing too hard. Very sophomoric, very childish op-ed. Why the nomination doesn't reflect the views of the majority of our people. Amy Coney Barrett, along with Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, were appointed by a president who lost the popular vote. Now, remember that, folks. I'm going to come back to that. And confirmed by a Republican Senate majority that represents less than half of Americans. So if you do the math, millions of Americans are silenced in the halls of power. Corrupt Republican leadership is numb to its own hypocrisy and doesn't reflect the views of the majority of the values we hold dear. Now, let me go back up to her point about the president who lost a popular vote. Boo, hoo, hoo. The Constitution says the president is not elected by the popular vote. Get that straight, folks. Get that straight. The president is elected through the Electoral College. The candidate that wins the most electoral votes from each state, the electoral vote, if you don't know, is made up of the 2 senators each state has, and it's also made up of all the representatives in the House of Representatives based on population. That's why some states have more electoral votes than other votes. That's why some states like Pennsylvania, where I live, is called a battleground state. So just because he didn't get elected by the popular vote doesn't mean anything. That's, to me, that's so frustrating when people will say that, because he's not the president of the people. It doesn't say president of the people of the United States. It's the president of the United States of America. The federal government, including the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, was set up by the states in convention when they created the Constitution of the United States. So the states gave the federal government's power. And the states can, through Article 5, can actually take that power back. That's another story. But part of the Constitution was electoral college. And the president is the president of these United States. The president represents the states, not the people. I'm sorry to tell people that. I'm sorry to burst your bubble if this is the first time you're hearing that. The president is of the United States. He represents the United States, the states themselves. You and I have representation in our elected officials. They're called congressmen, and they're called representatives, actually. Each one of us live in, except for those that live in D.C. And some of the territories we have representatives we vote for. I live in a congressional district. You live in a congressional district. We have that direct representation. I think the 17th Amendment was wrong-headed when they put it in the Constitution. That made the senators directly elected by the people of the states instead of appointed by the governors and the state legislatures. And I think that's something we need to work at repealing, is getting rid of the 17th Amendment and make the senators beholden to the states, not the people. We don't need double representation here in Pennsylvania. The state government in Pennsylvania needs representation in Washington, D.C., which no state has now because of the way the senators are elected. I'm stating fact, folks. So the popular vote doesn't matter. They're going to tell you about it again. The popular vote doesn't matter. People, I still have people saying, that, oh, well, he didn't. My father-in-law does this. Oh, he didn't win the popular vote. Doesn't matter. Oh, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Of course it matters. No, it doesn't. Read the Constitution. You have to win the majority of electoral college votes. Okay? And they talk about, and this is something that's been in the lamestream media lately here, when she talks about it doesn't reflect the views of the majority of our people. The United States Supreme Court is appointed, not elected. That way it can separate itself away from the politics of the day and hopefully not legislate from the bench, and that's what Democrats want them to do. They want them to legislate from the bench. Roe v. Wade was legislating from the bench. Chief Justice Roberts legislated from the bench when he changed two things in the Affordable Care Act. One, he changed the wording in the Affordable Care Act was the individual mandate if it was a fine, not a tax. And what that meant was if you didn't have insurance and you didn't buy insurance, you had to pay a fine to the IRS. And two, the ACA, the Obamacare, did not have a severability clause. And like I said, I'll get to that, and you can look that up. It didn't have a severability clause. But Chief Justice Roberts put the severability clause in and changed the wording of the law from a fine to a tax. Folks, that's the simplest example of legislating from the bench I can show you. So he saved the ACA wrongly. And see, the Supreme Court is not a court of the people. It doesn't reflect the views of the people. It should never reflect the views of the people. The people's views go through their elected representatives. They're in their congressional districts, and then they vote these people in, and that's how they get their views in the laws. Now, those laws have to be in keeping with the Constitution. And that's what the Supreme Court is there to do, to make sure the laws are in keeping with the Constitution, which, by the way, they've been doing a real lousy job for a real long time about that, because there's a lot of laws and there's a lot of things that the federal government is doing that is unconstitutional that they do not have the enumerated powers to do. Another video altogether. But I just wanted to point out the childishness of Elizabeth Warren and this whole thing about the Supreme Court and it's the people's court. No, that's Judge Wapner. That he's in the people's court. Supreme Court is not that at all. Now I want to read this one last paragraph here. And this is very telling of NowThis News and their philosophy. And this is very telling of the Democrats and the leftists and the progressives, the socialists, the fascists, the Marxists, the communists that make up the Democrat Party. So that's the bad news, she says. Here's the good news. This election will tell them we're watching. We've seen what they've done to our democracy, and we're fighting back. And look, I get it. These fights are hard. At times it can feel hopeless. But remember, hope is not given to us. Hope is created by us. So we can't give in to fear, and we can't back down, because the side of the undermining our democracy wants you to despair. Couple things there. I'm just going to go backwards on this. This thing about, remember, hope is not given to us. It absolutely is. Now, can I do things in my life to create circumstances where I have hope? Absolutely. But my hope as a Christian is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. That's where I get my hope from. It was given to me by somebody else. The Democrats are the party of despair. They neither give hope nor create hope at all. Their hope is that they can win back the Supreme Court by packing it. And here's my liberal friends that don't understand. They believe that the Republicans have been packing the court since 1969. No, they've been winning elections and nominating conservative justices according to the Constitution. That's not court packing. Court packing, actual definition, read my nose, is adding seats to the court by Congress, which they have the right to do that. They have the enumerated power to do so. They're the ones that created the courts. They can add district courts. They can add seats on the Supreme Court. At one time, there was 10. It was brought back to 9. Should always be an odd number. But they say what the Republicans are doing is packing the courts. Again, elections have consequences. And one last thing I want to say about this, I know this is getting a little bit long here, but I think these things are very important. The Democrats and Republicans are guilty of this too, because they've fallen into the vernacular, the vocabulary of the Democrats. When she keeps calling us our democracy. Oh, we've seen what they've done to our democracy. Well, okay, yeah. The Democrats want a democracy. We are not a democracy. We are a republic. To be more specific, we are a constitutional republic. And to be even more specific than that, we are a constitutional representative republic. In the United States of America, the founders recognized one truth the Democrats fail to recognize, and they will not recognize it, and they try their darndest to bury it, is the individual American citizen is sovereign over all government in America, period. Stop the sentence, go on to the next paragraph. We are a constitutional representative republic, which means we have elected representatives that will elect the will of the people in Congress, in the federal government, and the state government. That's how we're set up, folks. We're not a democracy. I know the Democrats act like they're a democracy, which that's fine if they want to be a democracy, but we're not. And if we do great harm to their democracy, I say good. Because democracies lead to nothing but trouble, lead to nothing but nations falling, and lead into damnation for the nation. So I just wanted to share that with you, folks. I didn't want to scare. It's Halloween. Maybe I scared you a little bit with this. I hope not, but I hope I gave you some good information there, folks. Remember, I'm on the Dan Clements Show is on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I have a YouTube channel. The links are all going to be below in the description of the video after it's posted up here. And I just want to thank you for watching this. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that bell notification, because if you don't, you may never see these videos. I know I haven't done a lot in the past few years, and most of you that know me know why. I've been disabled with fibromyalgia. I got a bad case of it. So I try to do things when I can, and I'm starting to feel a little bit better as far as my meds, keeping things, figuring this whole thing out. So please be patient with me. I'm going to try to get more videos out as the weeks go on. And so I just want to thank you again for watching this video, and we'll see you on the next one.